Welcome to our Discover a Debut Author Series interview, which is about helping you discover your next great read by connecting you with an exciting new voice in fiction. Today, I'm joined by debut author Abby Lay to talk about her novel Lead Us Not, which is a contemporary literary fiction novel that has been described as a coming of age novel for grown-ups. It's been pitched for fans of Diana Reid's Love and Virtue, Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend, and Alice Pung's 100 Days. Abby Lay is based in Melbourne. She's a management consultant by day, has previously had a career as a lawyer, and studied English and theatre studies before her Juris Doctor studies from the University of Melbourne. Lead Us Not is described as an emotionally charged novel about female friendship and all of the tensions and controls that shape a friendship. So let's hear more about it and welcome Abby.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here with you.
So Abby, can you tell us about the book in your own words?
Yeah, of course. So Lead Us Not is, as you described, a coming of age novel, and it centres on the experience of a young woman named Millie, who is in her final year at a Catholic all-girls school, and someone from her year level, whose name is Olive, moves in next door. And really, the action of the novel follows their developing friendship to its perhaps inevitable fragmentation, and all that it is that shapes the friendship that they do form, and what follows after that.
Great. And so where did the inspiration for the book come from?
It's a little bit hard to answer that question in the sense that I was on holidays in Mexico, sitting on a bus, and all of a sudden had this voice in my head with the very first line of the novel and what has always been the first line of the novel. And then I seemed to have a scene to accompany that. When I came home, I sort of thought, oh, the dynamic between these two characters, who I ultimately knew were Millie and Olive, is really interesting and quite strangely charged. And I'd love to be able to capture that and sort of see where it goes. And after I came home and wrote that scene, I sort of just wanted to see what would happen after that. And in hindsight, I think I was reflecting a lot on the defining place of adolescent friendships in people's lives, and particularly women's lives, and how those endure for many years after you've graduated, and perhaps what it is that contributes to the intensity and the grief experience when they fall apart.
Really interesting. And it is International Women's Day later this week as well. So it's a great story to talk about female friendships as well. So the story is told from Millie's perspective. Why did you choose to share the story from Millie's point of view rather than both points of view?
I think as a reader, I've always really loved characters that have blind spots, especially if they don't, if they're really reflective characters and characters that love to analyze, because those things are not the same as having insight. And although initially it wasn't really a choice to adopt her point of view, that was the voice that kind of came through the strongest. As I went on, I began to see how we as readers might see through her perception and might be able to load her perception with what we're gathering, even through that very biased perspective. And so I thought that drove the narrative forward in quite an interesting way.
Hmm. So Lead Us Not explores, I guess, what you could call the intoxicating nature of friendships as well. So what made you want to explore this side of friendships where they become almost a little bit toxic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think part of it comes from what I described earlier around how defining these things can be at that adolescent time of life, where we're very aware of how other people perceive us, very susceptible to influence, and desiring to connect with other people. And when all of that's left unchecked, I suppose it sort of transfers it into this potential for obsession. And I was really curious about how a social context and how a family context could really accentuate that, and hold people back from understanding the place of these relationships in their lives. And I think it's that lack of understanding and a lack of a blueprint for what the significance of some of these friendships might be, especially when they start to fall apart, that can take it into that really stressful and, as you've described, almost toxic place.
Mm. Interesting, and I'm sure a lot of females and young females will really be interested in hearing about about the friendship there. So I guess we want to ask you a little bit about your writing process, because there's a lot of emerging writers out there who are interested in your path to publication. So Lead Us Not was shortlisted for the Victorian Premier's Award for Unpublished Manuscript. Was that the starting point, or how did it all unfold for you?
Yeah, that was very much the starting point. So I began drafting it in January 2020, so just before COVID hit, after I got back from Mexico, which is a lucky holiday, really, given the timing of
Yeah.
everything. And I think within a year and a half or so, I had a first draft, and a friend of mine suggested that the VPLAs, as we call them here in Victoria, could be a good destination for the manuscript because as she described it, agents and publishers tend to watch those shortlists, and because it's not a shortlisting or a winning isn't connected to a particular publishing house. They're great at opening opportunities up across the publishing industry. So I sort of thought, I'll start there. And if that doesn't work, I'll look at some other avenues to publication. But fortunately for me, it was shortlisted. And within about a week or so, I'd met with a couple of different agents and ended up being represented by Curtis Brown and the lovely Claire Forster at Curtis Brown. And it was her really that took it out to market after we developed it together. She matched it to a small group of publishers who she thought would really resonate with the novel. And pleasingly, I found exactly the right home for me in Penguin.
That's great, and congratulations. It's a great achievement. And so I guess what's next for you? You've obviously got a really busy day job as well, but are you working on a new writing project at the moment?
Yeah, I am. I'm working on a new novel, which is still in relatively early stages. And given the way that I wrote Let Us Not, I kind of have no idea what's happening in the novel yet. I'm really just following it to sort of see where the story sort of arises from. But I've got that same propulsive sense that I felt when I was writing my first one. So very hopeful to finish it in the next year.
Well, we'll be looking out for it. So thank you, Abby, for chatting with us today. And if you want to read Lead Us Not, you can request a copy from the library. It is out now. And there's so many more reasons why us readers should be supporting the journey of a debut author like Abby. It can help us read outside of our comfort zone, get a new perspective, and helps the industry by continuing to foster literary talent in Australia. So make sure you keep an eye out for our other Discover a Debut Author events and interviews. And you never know, you might just find your next new favourite read. So thank you, Abby, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. Great to talk to you.